The subject of this video is not an easy thing to talk about. It involves our future. It describes very disturbing and scary things that could happen in the next 10 to 20 years. It'd be no exaggeration to say that some of this could be the most frightening news you've ever seen or heard. Some of it could literally ruin your outlook on life. The reason why it's so frightening is because it's real. It's not fiction. It consists of carefully researched facts laid out in a 31-page report, 7 pages of which are references from a very respected scholar and analyst. The report is called Deep Adaptation, A Map for Navigating Climate Tragedy, by Professor Jim Bendell. It's on the internet. You can Google it and read it yourself. I hesitated to read it. I stalled on it because I was given a summary of its contents and it seemed too depressing. But finally I did read it because I know about something that the report didn't, something that could completely change the report's conclusions. There's a wild card factor, a new development, possibly even a potential solution that the report didn't take into account. So there's both good and bad news on this video. We're just going to start with the bad news. Here we go. So what's this alarming report's basic message? By now you might have already guessed it. In a nutshell, it can be summarized in 3 parts. 1, the certainty of climate change. 2, the severity of climate change. And 3, the immediacy of climate change. Let's take them one at a time. First, we talk about the certainty of climate change. It is now 2018. We've been hearing for more than 3 decades about the crisis. The evidence is now overwhelming. We now have what Al Gore calls a preponderance of evidence. I won't bore you with the details. You can read it yourself. Bendell goes through page after excruciating page of the latest sobering evidence. Long story short, at this point in time, to doubt that climate change is both real and man-caused is nothing short of ridiculous. The evidence is too overwhelming. The second factor is the severity of climate crisis. Contrary to what many now seem to believe, even environmentalists, according to Bendell and his evidence, we're not going to be able to adapt to the coming changes. We're not going to just build a few seawalls, move a few people from low-lying areas, and adjust to slightly higher temperatures. The data that has recently emerged suggests total societal collapse. This means agricultural failures, massive migrations, disease, starvation, massive lawlessness, severe competition for resources, all of which could easily lead to World War III. Billions of people would die. There's also a new possibility that we didn't hear about before: human extinction. The changes could easily be so severe that we don't survive as a species. The key factor here is the possibility of runaway methane gas release from either the oceans and/or from melting permafrost. This would basically mean our atmosphere becomes literally unbreathable. Recently, there have been ominous signs that this could already be starting. In any case, we're approaching a fork in the road, a tipping point where we can only go one way or the other. The question is not if, but when. So the third factor is the timing of it all. Unfortunately, a tipping point to catastrophe could now easily happen much, much quicker than we thought before. It's not decades away anymore. It could be within 10 years. One problem is that the current renewable energy projects are not moving fast enough. Take, for example, this graph. Tesla Car Company thinks that this is an optimistic projection, that electric cars will have half the market by 2040. Most environmentalists think this is a good thing. What they're ignoring is this: all these internal combustion engines are still putting out all this carbon into the atmosphere. This is not acceptable. We can't afford it. We don't have this kind of time. The timing to the tipping point also involves the idea of linear versus nonlinear rate of change, where in the latter, it takes on an exponential curve as shown here. There is mounting evidence now for nonlinear change, and because of this, Bendell's overall conclusion is that we can't adjust fast enough and we're basically doomed. The fork in the road ahead is the tipping point. Which way it will tip likely depends on what we do next. The scariness of Bendell's doomsday scenario might be a catalyst to actually help motivate people if they know there's a wildcard factor. So let's talk about the so-called wildcard factor. I won't go into details here because there's another video that does just that. Here's a sneak preview. There's now a new fuel technology that could replace gasoline, diesel fuel, and jet fuel. It's called METROL. Not only is it zero emissions, it would actually cleanse the air of our cities. We could virtually eliminate smog. Even better, it could dramatically reduce atmospheric CO2 levels and potentially solve climate change. This new fuel would be 1/3 cheaper than gasoline. Because it could be made from biomass, like garbage and sewage, as well as solar and wind energy, as well as fossil fuels, there'd be unlimited supply. We'd never run out. Because of its patented carbon capture technology, it would cut the cost of carbon fiber in half and thereby revolutionize manufacturing. This would create both high profits and millions of jobs. To learn more about METROL, here's the link. Thank you.